Hello, my name is Sophie Raine and I'm a PhD student in the Department of English Literature and Creative Writing at Lancaster University. And today we're just going to be looking at 5 things that you should know about J.B. Priestley's An Inspector Calls in roughly about 5 minutes. So this is a bit of an overview. So the first thing that I think you should know about the play is the stage directions are crucial in understanding the play and Priestley's message. The play is full of euphemism. The play is didactic. The inspector is a storyteller and constructs the narrative, and hope is to be found in the younger generation. So stage directions. So these are really important to really show the power dynamics between the characters, how the actors are meant to behave, as well as giving directions on things like lighting and props. So I've just pulled out a few examples here. So the first one is the seating arrangements of the Burlings. So we see Mr. Burling is at the head of the table. He is the patriarch of the family. He is the head of the family. And we get this impression that he's quite self-centered. At the other end of the table is Mrs. Burling. So there's a possibility that there's kind of a bridge between them. There's a gap there. And we also have Eric, who is situated downstage, okay, which indicates that he's possibly outcast from the family. And there's perhaps, again, some kind of tension there. With the dialogue, it's particularly important to notice how the characters speak to each other, as well as how the characters change over how they kind of interact with each other. So a really good example of this is Sheila. So at the beginning of the play, she speaks in a way to Gerald that is excited. And by the end, she is using sharp sarcasm, okay, because that reflects her maturity and her, I suppose, cynicism in the way that she is kind of understanding the family and the way she is understanding the real nature of her family. So we also have the lighting. So the lighting should be pink and intimate at the beginning, here reflecting this quite cosy, quite pleasant atmosphere, and also perhaps indicating that the Burlings see things through rose-tinted glasses. When the inspector comes in, it should be brighter and harder, indicating that he is shining a spotlight upon the Burlings, and he's really exposing them for what they really are. And finally, we have the doorbell. So the doorbell at first interrupts Mr. Burling's speech on capitalism. So it's almost like the inspector is interrupting there. He is contradicting what he is saying, okay? And we are about to have the ideology, the ideas of the Burlings challenged by this inspector. So euphemism. So a euphemism is just a way of making something seem a little bit more pleasant, a lot less blunt, and is particularly used a lot by the Burlings, who are of a wealthier class. Okay, so they want to really have a sense of decorum, they want to be quite polite, so they often sort of sugarcoat things and they make things seem a lot kind of more pleasant than they actually are. So for example, we have Mr. Burling referring to Eva's suicide as horrid business. So whereas we have the inspector being quite blunt and quite graphic about how Eva died, Mr. Burling uses this term business, which again is a very sanitized sort of word. It indicates that he is downplaying the seriousness of what happened to Eva. We also have them referring to Eva's pregnancy as being a particular condition. So again, trying to shy away from the fact that she was pregnant, that there was obviously a baby involved, and trying to, again, get a bit of emotional distance from what's happened there. It's almost like when Sheila says that the Burlings are putting up a wall, okay, and euphemism is one of the ways that they put up this wall. We also have Mrs. Burling referring to Eva as a girl of that sort. So she's referring there to working class girls, but also sex workers. So what she is doing there is, again, she is just grouping Eva in with other girls that she associates with that class. She is really kind of denying Eva any sort of individuality, and again is sort of putting up that kind of barrier by not acknowledging her as an individual person. And she's also speaking about her in quite a disparaging, quite unkind way when she is doing that. So again, all of these are ways to distance the Burlings from the events of what has happened, and to kind of, again, make themselves seem less culpable or less guilty than they are. We also have that the play is didactic, so that means that it is trying to teach us a message, it is trying to give us a moral. So we know that the play is set in 1912, so before World War I, but it's performed in 1945, after World War II. So the reason for this is for dramatic irony, first of all, so we know that we can't really trust the ideas of Mr. Burling, who claims that the Germans don't want war. But also it's to reflect again on this kind of sense of post-World War II life, okay? So it's trying to advocate socialism and the idea that we are members of one body. So it's trying again to show this sort of wartime spirit, post-World War II, and reflect upon a kind of more moral way of life where communities would bandy together. And Priestley is sort of saying that with the rise of capitalism and following the war, people are much more individualistic, they're much more self-serving, and he's saying that that is not a very moral way to go about your life, and that we're all actually connected to one another. Okay, we also have the inspector as a storyteller. So the inspector constructs the narrative in the form of an interview, and we can see this through his use of props. He won't let any of the other characters see the photograph until it's their turn. He has a particular order in which he likes to run through things, and this is for kind of dramatic effect, and he's also trying to make the Burlings realise things before he points them out to them. He's kind of acting like a teacher and a guide here. He is moving them through the story so that they can see the errors that they've made, and so that they can maybe view Eva in a more compassionate way as well, rather than as one kind of isolated incident for each of them, just to show how they're all connected. And this really kind of builds up drama, and we have a reveal and a confession at the end of every act. And it also allows the Burlings to condemn themselves, okay, as the story kind of unfurls in front of us. And finally, Priestley is saying that it's not all bleak, that there is hope to actually be found in the younger generations. So Sheila and Eric are particularly influenced by the inspector, unlike the older generations of Mr. and Mrs. Burling and Gerald, who are a bit more set in their ways, and they are only really concerned about accountability and the consequences, whereas Sheila and Eric have a deeper, more profound understanding of what the inspector is trying to teach them. They know that the morals of the story still stand, whether or not they're actually punished for them. So Sheila says, "You began to learn something and now you've stopped. It frightens me the way you talk, and I can't listen to any more of it." So again, she's starting to realise what her family are really like, and she's becoming far more aware. Eric similarly says, like, what is the use of behaving sensibly? So he's sort of turning his back again on this sense of decorum, of propriety, of the wealthier classes. And again, he is starting to kind of connect with the inspector's message. Okay, so that's a very brief sort of overview. Thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more about what it's like to study English literature at Lancaster University, you can start with our website. And for any further information on an inspector course, there are further titles in this series, which are a little bit longer, go into a bit more depth on a range of topics. Thank you.